Okay, so what I'd like to do to bring to the stage is our next panel, Farming and You. So could we have our moderator, Leon Tillman, come up to the stage, please? Oh, you came from the back.
I'm sneaky. Good morning, everybody. We will be starting our Farming and You panel. I'd ask our USDA representatives to come on up on stage. And starting out this morning, just real brief introductions. I do want to just give some names and titles as we have representation here across our Delaware USDA family. We have Jamie Arthur here with NRCS. We also have Caitlin Sheffer here with Farm Service Agency and Bruce Weaver with Rural Development. And so I'm going to be a moderator, but I won't have to moderate much because we're going to start with presenting some information, some technical, again, to kind of provide a little background as later on we're going to lead into our financing and accessing finance across our agencies and across the programs. So what we will do, I believe we have our slides queued up. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and what we will do, we'll run through all of our presentations and take questions at the end. Again, please use this time to ask those questions you may have. We're going to be covering information related to heirs property, accessing information as far as grants for rural development, as well as climate smart ag for conservation. So again, as they are presenting, if you have questions, please take note of those, write those down, and I'll be coming back and we'll take those questions to get you all answers. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Jamie.
How's this advanced, Leon? Down. Okay. And you're going to advance on?
She's going to.
Okay, just say next slide. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? Do I need to pull up the mic a little bit? Sorry, I'm tethered by technology a little bit. I tried to go through this presentation several times, but I couldn't commit it to memory, so I'm going to run through it just so we can go through it. But I am Jamie Arthurs. I'm the State Resource Conservationist here for Natural Resource Conservation Service here in Delaware. And oftentimes when I do a lot of speaking in front of groups and stuff like that, and when I got thinking about it the other day when I was putting together this slide deck, I got thinking, I was like, how many people actually know who NRCS really is? And I didn't want to assume that everybody that was going to be, especially when Leon and I were talking the other day about the number of people that were going to be here today, I was like, I did not want to assume that you all knew who NRCS was. So I want to start off with a brief introduction for who we are. So our agency, the Natural Resource Conservation Service Agency, has been around for about 80 years, and our primary goal is to work with ag producers and landowners to implement conservation practices on their land to address resource concerns and help them maintain their sustainability and profitability as part of their operation. Our mission is we deliver conservation solutions so our agriculture producers can protect natural resources and feed a growing world, which speaks very much to what Secretary Skuse was talking about earlier. And our vision is a world of clean and abundant and healthy soils, resilient landscapes, and thriving agricultural communities through voluntary conservation. And I want to point that out. It's very important to understand that everything that we do with NRCS is voluntary. Everything that we do with our producers and landowners is voluntary conservation. So just a little, next slide, sorry. Just a little bit about our agency. We were actually born out of the Dust Bowl of the 30s. We often talk about Hugh Hammond Bennett as being the father of conservation or soil conservation, and also the father of our agency, the Natural Resource Conservation Service. We weren't always known as NRCS. We originally started off as the Soil Conservation Service, and that was the primary reason for that was because at that time in the 30s, during the Dust Bowl period, soil conservation was the most important thing, particularly out west, obviously. There was a lot of issues with, drought, a lot of tillage of soils that led to a lot of wind-blown soil being moved out across the country, impacting productivity of those soils. One story I always like to remember and tell folks is, Hugh Hammond Bennett was very creative. He was actually kind of timed when he went to D.C. to talk about, this issue and creating the Soil Conservation Service. He timed it so when he was there in D.C., actually one of these large dust clouds from the Midwest was actually spreading across Washington. So it just kind of lent that credibility to the argument that he was trying to make for conservation, particularly soil conservation at the time. Next slide. So what's the process with NRCS? Obviously, over the 80 years that we've been in operation, what we do and how we do it has become increasingly more complex. Obviously, we don't just focus on soil conservation anymore. We also focus on water quality, wildlife habitat, many different types of resource concerns that we focus on. Our primary source of funding, particularly our financial assistance, is through the Farm Bill that Secretary Skuse was talking about. Hopefully, Secretary Skuse is wrong. Maybe we'll get it before February. We did chat a little bit on our way in this morning, but hopefully we do get it by February. Obviously, that'll make things move a lot easier for us this year. But that's the primary resource that we use to fund what we do, and actually working with producers and landowners like you in the field implementing conservation practices to improve your operations and address those resource concerns. Kind of the backbone of our agency as far as working with producers and landowners is our 9 steps of conservation planning, and I'll kind of go over that a little bit. But through that process, working with individuals, obviously we take your objectives and goals in mind, look at what issues, resource concerns that you're having on your farm, develop a plan to address those issues and keep you profitable and sustainable into the future. And I always remind folks, particularly our staff and our partner staff, when we're working with producers in the field, is conservation planning. It's not just about what we're trying to achieve. One of the first things that we need to keep in mind, and one of the main objectives, is what your objectives for your operation is. No operation is the same. Even we've got a diverse, particularly in Delaware, we have very diverse cropping operations, livestock operations. We always need to keep what your objectives are in mind in that process. Next slide. So what is conservation planning? So, we are a federal agency, so we have a national planning procedure handbook that we follow. And a lot of these terms are directly out of our national planning and procedure handbook. But conservation is the use and management of natural resources to ensure that they are sustained, are used in a sustained productive way. But conservation means a lot. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, depending on what type of operation you are, where you are, who you are, where you are in your life. Conservation means a lot of different things. Oftentimes, conservation means, am I going to be able to pay all my bills this year? Am I productive enough to do that? Other folks think of, is this land? Am I going to be able to keep this land here for my children, my grandchildren? So conservation means a lot of different things to a lot of folks. It really just depends on what your operation is and where you are at any given time. But conservation planning is really a combination of us, our NRCS staff and our partner staff, working with you to identify what your objectives are for your operation, where are you having challenges, where are the opportunities to address those resource concerns on your farm, and taking into account the social aspects, economic aspects, ecological aspects, to basically keep you productive and sustainable in the long term. So a conservation plan is really a record of your decisions as a producer or a landowner. You ultimately are the ones that make the decisions for how you're going to address resource concerns and how your operation is going to move forward. So that conservation plan is typically a collection of conservation practices. Those practices are technical type practices. They can be structural or vegetative that actually address those resource concerns that are specific to your farm, and kind of lays out how you're going to address those issues starting now and into the future. Next slide. One of the things I always remind folks too is planning, and anytime you're doing planning is in its nature both progressive and adaptive. So we often talk about the 9 steps of planning, but when we're working with folks, oftentimes, somebody might be already at step 2, or they might be at step 1, or they might have already adopted some technology to address resource concerns. So it's a constant flux, and it's always adaptive and progressive. Oftentimes when we go out and work with folks, they have that one problem in mind that they want to address and want to know how they can address it. But part of the planning process is for us to actually work with farmers and landowners to make sure that, yes, we identify what that objective is, what that issue you have is, but also work with you to identify those other things that you might not have looked at yet. You don't know what you don't know. So us going out there working with you to identify those other resource concerns, yeah, you can address that one resource concern right off the bat, but you also need to take into account these other issues exist on your land or on your farm, and they could be addressed as well. Next slide. So I just wanted to kind of throw up some of I've talked about resource concerns, and in this slide you can see on your top, it would be on your left, this is an example of classic gully erosion in cropland. That is kind of getting back to our, back to our history of soil conservation, addressing, erosion, whether it be by water or wind. The one on the bottom left is actually an ag operation. Typically this is more associated with a water quality issue on a farm related to livestock. So, this list of resource concerns, these are the things that we typically are looking at to address when we come out and work with you to, hopefully improve these situations that will actually improve your profitability and sustainability in the long term. Next slide. So this is the nine steps of conservation planning. You'll see it if you Google it. You'll actually see it in many different forms. Sometimes it's linear. This is kind of my favorite, image of the 9-step of planning process. It's kind of that, it kind of gets back to that it being adaptive and progressive, depending on where you are in the process. But it's basically in 3 phases. You got the collection analysis. That's where we actually come out and take a look at your property. Identify what your resources are, how you're producing your crops, what limitations you might have. We kind of collect all that data up. And then through the decision and support process, we actually look at, okay, what are the issues that you're facing? What are the opportunities that you have? And we actually develop alternatives that you can pick from, because a lot of times there's not just one way to treat a resource concern. There might be multiple ways to treat resource concerns. So we work with you to identify those alternatives, and ultimately you make that decision on how you want to implement that plan, what alternatives you want to implement that plan, and put that plan in place. Part of the planning process also involves, up to this point, it's primarily technical assistance that we're working with you on, but during that application phase, this is oftentimes where our financial assistance programs come in, where, we've said these are the practices that you can do to help improve or sustain your operation, and here are the Farm Bill programs that we have available to help you implement those practices as part of that plan. And like any good plan, it's always good to stop, evaluate. Did you reach your goal? Where did you miss your goal? What do we need to go back and look at and adjust to address in the future? Next slide. So I oftentimes want to, particularly now, and Secretary Skuse actually mentioned climate and several times during his presentation. Climate resiliency, primarily adaptation and mitigation, has become more of a focus for NRCS here recently. And primarily is because a lot of times the practices that we do, the conservation practices we do working with producers and landowners on their farms, not only are we addressing those resource concerns that I showed you earlier, but a lot of times those practices also have a climate benefit, whether you're trying to adapt to climate as it is today, or you're trying to mitigate those changes, or try to mitigate those changes might happen in the future. So as farmers and landowners, now we actually have a very good opportunity to really, use those conservation practices to adapt to what we're seeing as far as climate change, and also help, on a larger scale, mitigate those impacts by implementing those conservation practices on your farms. So we tend to split them out into kind of categories. So the first few are soil health, nutrient management, livestock waste management, and enhanced grazing. So with these kind of categories, like for soil health, reduced till, no-till situations on the farm. So the less you till, the more organic matter you build over time, the better your soil structure becomes. Implementing practices like cover crops are also beneficial for improving soil structure and also sequestering carbon into the soils. Nutrient management, reducing the amount of nutrients that you apply, applying them at the right time helps reduce that potential for greenhouse gases, and also improves water quality as well. Working with livestock operations, improve grazing systems, prescribed grazing, those things actually help with sequestering carbon in those forages and in those soils as well. Next slide. The big focus on agroforestry and forestry. Obviously, planting trees is a great way to sequester carbon. Implementing practices like grass plantings, tree plantings, and wetland restoration are great mitigation and adaptation type practices. And then direct, any improvements in energy that reduce energy use and or reduce emissions are also great for climate resiliency on farms. So with that, I always want to leave people with resources where they can go. Okay, so our first place we always tell folks they can stop and shop is kind of the thing we typically say is at our website, the NRCS website. You can find conservation by state. The process for getting assistance. It's kind of a one-stop shop for those folks that maybe aren't familiar, want to get a little bit more information with the agency and what we can do for you. The other thing you will find there, I've talked a lot about conservation practices, to address resource concerns on your operation. You can get to what we call our electronic field office tech guide. These are our standards that we use to implement practices with you on your farms and your land. So this is publicly available. Anybody can roll in here, pull up, our cover crop standard. It kind of explains what the purpose is, how to implement it, and what benefits that you will get on your farm by implementing that practice. So that is publicly available. Anybody can go there to get those practice standards. Also wanted to point out conservation at work. If you type that in, NRCS conservation at work, there's actually a whole library of practices, of videos on the practices that we implement with producers as well. So it kind of gives you a little bit more background. I know for me, I tend to be a little bit more visual. Reading a standard is not always the easiest thing to do, but actually watching that video on that practice is very helpful oftentimes. And then, the reality of it is where the rubber meets the road is when you work with, a member of our staff, whether it's, a soil conservationist in one of our field offices or one of our conservation partners' staff. We do not do, conservation alone. We have a lot of partners that we're involved with that help us do this work with you guys out on your farm. So this is the contact information for each one of the field offices that we have in our counties, and our website again. And with that, I just wanted to do a quick reminder. We are scheduling appointments if you want to sit down with NRCS, specifically talk a little bit about your farm, what your opportunities are with us. We have a tent out back. You can actually sign up for a time to actually sit down with our conservation specialists to get a little bit more intimate with your operation and what we can do for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Leon.
Thank you, Jamie. Next, we're going to turn it over to Caitlin with FSA.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here with all of you at the first Black Farmers Conference at Dell State University. My name is Caitlin Sheffer. I am the County Executive Director for the Farm Service Agency in Sussex County, and I am grateful to have been given this opportunity to discuss how my agency can help address the needs of today's farmers. I will be here for the next 2 days, as well as several other representatives from the Farm Service Agency. Please feel free to come talk to us, ask us any questions that you may have. I'm also incredibly nervous to be speaking in public. It's not an opportunity that I get very often. And so I'm going to start talking about myself because that's my favorite topic. And you guys are just going to have to go along for the ride. So when I was driving here today, I was like, why am I so nervous to do this? And then I thought, oh, because the last time I was in front of a large crowd, I was getting my FFA American degree, and it felt like I was an Eagles player in the Eagles Stadium with 50,000 people watching me, and I didn't have to speak. All I had to do was walk up the stairs. It's like graduation. Your name's on a board. They say your name, you smile, you shake their hand, they take a picture, you walk off. I made it up one stair. I'm wearing the iconic FFA uniform, tights, stockings, whatever they are, knee-length skirt, blue jacket. I made it up one stair. I fell. Somehow there's like something sharp on the stair. I cut my leg, so I'm walking across the stage, blood running down my leg, stockings all tore up. I look like I made it through a zombie apocalypse to get my American degree, and that's the only the most people I've ever been in front of, and likely the most people I will ever be in front of. So that was great. I did make it up the stairs today. No promises on the way down. The Farm Service Agency, or FSA, helps America's farmers invest in, improve, and expand their agricultural operations. Agency programs assist producers in recovering from the impacts of natural disasters and market fluctuations. Farm loan programs are available through the FSA for producers who want to get started in production agriculture or make investments in existing operations but are unable to obtain credit from private lenders. Also, I clearly learned nothing because pants and flats would have been a good idea, but somehow when I was driving today, committed, I'm still wearing tights and heels. FSA's network of more than 2,100 county offices ensures that producers can access FSA programs nationwide. Our employees work hard to ensure that all agricultural producers are aware of program and loan benefits, including minority, underserved, new and beginning farmers, military veterans who are involved or interested in production agriculture. Our county committees are a critical component of the day-to-day operations of FSA and allow grassroots input and local administration of federal farm programs. The farmers and ranchers who are elected to serve on FSA's county committees use their judgment and knowledge to help with the decisions necessary to administer FSA programs. Their input ensures the needs of their local producers are met. We always encourage and motivate farmers who are willing to serve on their county committees to get involved and help deliver farm programs. The topics for this session are successional planning, heirs property, advanced technology, climate adaptation, resiliency. So, how does FSA address these common farmer concerns? I'll start with heirs property, then discuss how FSA works with farmers on succession, implementation of technology, and climate change. All are factors in developing a more resilient farming operation. Heirs property is family-owned land that is jointly owned by descendants of a deceased person whose estate did not clear probate. Descendants or heirs may have the right to use the property, but lack a clear title. Heirs property issues were a barrier to access programs and services, including those at USDA, that often affected historically underserved producers and landowners. The heirs property relending program makes capital available to intermediary lenders. Heirs may apply directly to these lenders for loans to resolve land ownership and succession issues. This could include the purchase or consolidation of property interests, or buying out fractional interests of other heirs and jointly owned property to clear the title. By gaining legal title to the land, heirs can better access a wide range of government services. The program keeps farmland and farming, protects family farm legacies, and supports economic viability. As part of this process, heirs agree to complete a succession plan. Succession planning is vital to all farming operations. It's one piece of a farm's resilience. Resilience means being able to recuperate from shocks and negative impacts. It's the ability to survive and thrive in changing circumstances. Many farmers have been hard hit by pandemic-induced market fluctuations and disruptions, and more frequent, more intense climate-driven natural disasters. The factors driving financial distress are even more of a challenge for beginning, underserved, and small-scale farmers, as well as for innovative producers who are growing specialty crops or looking for ways to diversify and add value. These producers often have not had the time to build up a rainy day fund and cannot readily obtain commercial credit. Section 22006 of the Inflation Reduction Act, signed by President Biden in August of 2022, provides USDA with $3.1 billion to provide relief for distressed borrowers with certain existing Farm Service Agency direct or guaranteed loans, and to expedite assistance for those whose ag operations are at financial risk. USDA is implementing this funding with the goal of keeping borrowers farming, removing obstacles that currently prevent many borrowers from returning to their land, and improving the way that USDA approaches borrowing and loans. In other words, building the resiliency of these farming operations is paramount. The Discrimination Financial Assistance Program is a new program authorized by Section 22007E of the Inflation Reduction Act that is intended to provide financial assistance to farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners who experience discrimination in the USDA farm lending programs. For this program, Congress has authorized $2.2 billion for farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners who experience discrimination in USDA farm loan program prior to 2021. The application process is open through January 13th of 2024. The Inflation Reduction Act required that USDA work with third-party vendors to administer that program. The program website, call center, and office locations are managed by a national administrator and regional hubs who are responsible for program outreach, soliciting applications, and providing technical assistance. While FSA offices are not managing the program and cannot help people with their applications, your local FSA office can provide basic information on that program and direct you to local or online resources. You can get more program details and contact information at our exhibit that's in the tent outside. So why was this program targeted to USDA farm lending programs? Access to capital is critical to starting a farming operation. Once established, capital is essential to the business's ability to survive and thrive in challenging circumstances. Farm Service Agency farm loans offer access to funding for a wide range of producer needs, from securing land to financing the purchase of equipment, from beginning farmers who have limited financial history to qualify for commercial credit to farmers who have suffered financial setbacks from natural disasters. The Farm Service Agency offers a variety of loans to provide additional resources farmers need to establish and maintain profitable farming operations. Each year, Congress targets a percentage of farm ownership and farm operating loan funds to beginning and socially disadvantaged farmers. Providing loan programs is important as these groups of farmers have historically experienced more difficulties obtaining financial assistance. Resilient farming operations need to be able to manage risk. FSA has a variety of conservation, risk management, and disaster resources that farmers can use to mitigate risk in their operations. FSA's disaster programs can provide farmers with an essential safety net. One example is the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, affectionately known as NAP. NAP provides financial assistance to producers of crops that are not insurable through traditional crop insurance. This program mitigates losses caused by natural disasters that result in lower yields or crop losses or crops being prevented from being planted. Producers who have certified as a socially disadvantaged limited resource, beginning or veteran farmer, receive free basic NAP coverage and a waiver of the NAP service fee. Farmers who suffered crop yield and value losses from qualifying disasters occurring in 2022 can apply for financial assistance through the Emergency Relief Program. This program can help offset the financial impacts of crop losses. Resilience means being able to recuperate from shocks and negative impacts. Managing and mitigating risk is essential to the long-term viability of a farming operation. My office frequently gets calls from people who are interested in becoming farmers. They want to know how many acres they need to be considered to be a farm. There is no size requirement to participate in FSA programs. USDA is committed to working with farms of all sizes and in all locations, including those in urban areas. Urban agriculture includes cultivation, processing, and distribution of agricultural products in urban and suburban areas. Urban farmers and gardeners work among diverse populations to expand access to nutritious foods and foster community engagement, provide jobs, educate communities about farming, and expand green spaces. These important farmers definitely need the ability to survive and thrive in changing circumstances. They must also be resilient. This session is about farming and you. Whether you're an established farmer or just starting out, the Farm Service Agency is here to assist you. I encourage you to find your local USDA service center and meet with local staff. There's a service center in nearly every county in the United States. Delaware has one in each county. We will be participating in the conference for the next 2 days. I encourage you to introduce yourself and talk to us about your farming operation and what tools we might have to help you and keep you resilient. Lastly, I'd like to thank our hosts, the First State African American Farmers Association, USDA, NRCS, and DSU for bringing us all together and making this conference possible. I think there's a picture up there, yeah. This is a Delaware Farm Service Agency staff. So if you see any of us here or you know any of us, you have any questions, please feel free to come talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Caitlin. And next we will turn it over to Bruce Weaver, Rural Development State Energy Coordinator.
Okay, good morning. Can everybody hear me? I'm Bruce Weaver. I'm in rural development, part of USDA. I'm the state energy coordinator for Delaware and Maryland, and I'm also a loan specialist and program specialist with some of our other programs. It's really a privilege to be here for the first Black Farmer Conference here in Delaware. This past Saturday, I had the opportunity to attend the 20th Small Farm Conference that UMES has been putting on. And I think of the 20 that they've held, I've only missed one. And it's an opportunity to talk to farmers and a lot of the smaller farms that may not know anything about the programs that are available to them. And I want to give you a little bit of information on 3 programs that we have. Unlike FSA and NRCS, that their main focus is on farms. On the rural development, ours is much broader. We work with nonprofits and public bodies, commercial businesses, but we do have 3 programs that are set aside for farms. And the Farm Bill does have a lot to do with getting them back again. The first program is something called our Value Added Producer Grant. Now, this is a grant for farms that you're currently growing something or you're raising something, so it could be fruits, vegetables, livestock, that you are currently selling that product and you want to be able to expand your market and really go out further. Maybe you sell to family, friends, and farmers markets, but you want to be able to perhaps get those products maybe into some of the local stores, but just get them out to a much larger market. That value-added producer grant can do that. And it's for advertising, it's for marketing, it could be for paying for transportation to get your product from point A to point B and C. It can cover the cost of an employee to do the travel. It can cover the gas. It can cover any type of marketing that will allow you to be able to sell to a wider audience. Some examples. Over the years in Maryland has a lot of wineries. We've done quite a few of those grants to help the wineries be able to get their wine out to a much larger market. We've worked with some dairy farms where they were keeping some of the raw milk instead of selling it off, and they were making ice cream or they were making yogurt. And they used the grant to be able to get that product to a wider audience. We've had a grant for free-range chickens and another farm just selling the eggs. So, but you have to be growing it and selling it now. Now, you could have a product, and the example I like to use is tomatoes. So maybe you do grow tomatoes, and all the pretty red ones with no marks on them, you have a market for those, and they go to supermarkets or local family convenience stores. What you do with the seconds, the ones that aren't quite as pretty, is you make a spaghetti sauce or you make a tomato sauce, old family recipe. And everybody said it's great. You ought to sell this to a bigger audience and make some money out of it. How do I do that? We have the second part of the value-added grant. Instead of having a grant that's going to pay to get that product to market, this first piece of that grant can help you get a plan developed to be able to then sell that product. A consultant can be brought in. The consultant will now determine, probably after tasting it, to make sure that it's going to be saleable. How are you going to get that product to market? Where is your market? What type of label do you put on the product? Do you put it in a can? Do you put it into a jar? But it's a way to be able to take those products that you're currently making and be able to get them out to a wider market. Value-added producer grant. Generally, it comes out once a year. We think it may come out in March of this year, but we're not sure. Usually there's a 60 to a 90-day window. It's an application that you can do it yourself. There's a few grant writers that can help you prepare it. Another program that we have is our Rural Energy for America program, REAP. Now, this program is really the applications that we get, and it is a grant, just like on the value-added side, it is a grant. The applications that we get from farms and for businesses come from vendors. 99% of all the applications that come in are for solar systems. We do get grants that come in from farms for new grain dryers. They have one that's 20 years old. It definitely is not producing as well as it could, not being as efficient as it could be. They can apply for a grant to get a new grain dryer. But typically it's going to be solar systems. And we, as the folks processing the applications, we really don't have a say where these applications are coming from, which farms are getting them. The bulk of the farms are going to be the poultry farms. The poultry growers, they don't have a lot of control over a lot of the expenses, but they can control their electric consumption, and they can do that by putting up solar systems. But we really don't have a say. The applications come into us, we process them, and then the grants do get awarded. In August, we had a new program that was announced that works along with the energy program. I think if I recall, we got a notice about 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon for a conference call about the new program. It's called TAG. It's a Technical Assistance Grant. And there were applications being submitted from a lot of different organizations across the country, sending them into all the states to be able to participate in the program. And those grants could be for as much as $500,000 to as low as $100,000. And for both Delaware and Maryland, we awarded 5 grants, $100,000 apiece, to agencies, companies that will be working with our state. I'm certainly going to be able to put them in touch with Del State, UMES, your association, to be able to work with you and your communities to be able to let everybody know the types of energy programs that your farm might be able to do. And maybe a solar system is not the answer, but maybe you need some type of energy efficient project on your farm. And maybe it could be a grain dryer. Maybe you do have a couple small poultry houses, but the fans aren't working, or the motors to the fans aren't working. They can be replaced, and the grant can help cover 50% of the cost to be able to do that. But these organizations, they're going to be coming into our 2 states and be able to talk and have meetings and let everybody know that they're going to be able to put an application package together for you. No cost. There's a lot of places out there, and even some of the vendors will charge some fees to be able to put a package together. With this grant, because they're being paid by USDA, there are no costs to you to be able to take advantage of what they have to offer. I think it's a great opportunity for small farms especially, and those especially who have not heard about any of the programs that we have, to be able to take advantage of something like this. So hopefully within the next month or so, these folks will start to be making their way into our 2 states, be able to have meetings, let folks know what they can do for you in the way of energy. Now, if you're interested in the value-added program, we can certainly talk to you about that, work with you on the application, or get you a grant writer to perhaps help you put that package together. Right now, though, we do know it's going to be at least March before it comes out. I will be here for 2 sessions tomorrow. I think we also have one of my colleagues, Colleen Reed, in the audience. I think we have a table with some information on it. But we can, any questions you may have, even after we're finished here, I'd be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weaver, and thank you to all the speakers. I know we are running close on time, and I want to emphasize as well that all of them highlighted that we are all offering assistance, and it being free assistance, technical assistance, and we will be here both days. So if you have any questions, again, we are running short on time, so aren't going to be able to take questions right now, but definitely find our USDA representatives, have those discussions so we can have that opportunity to talk to you and talk with you about your specific questions and concerns. So again, thank you to our panelists, and we'll do one more round of applause as we have our acting regional conservationist, Casey Taylor, come up to do introductions for our next speaker, Deputy Undersecretary for the FPAC Mission Area, Honorable Gloria Montano Green.